6 of Unapologetically Woman. We're celebrating phenomenal women all across Kentucky who make no apologies for their perspectives or the impacts that they're making in the community. Today we're celebrating Cherlynn Stevenson. Cherlynn is a wife, the first woman to represent Kentucky's 88th district, and she's running for Kentucky District 6 in the House of Representatives. Unapologetically Woman, Cherlynn Stevenson, that's you.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the recognition and appreciate your time today.
Oh, absolutely. Cherlynn, you've got a thing for peanut butter and jelly.
I sure do. It's my favorite sandwich, but it's also my 3 kitty cats.
Hey.
Yes, I am one of those crazy cat ladies that they talk about. So my only babies have fur, but that's okay. So I have I joke sometimes and say that I have 8-year-old triplets, peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, when I saw that, I was like, that is the cutest thing ever.
I know. We got them. They were litter mates, and I was like, oh, they've got to have some kind of a cool name, and you know, we thought, and finally, that's what we landed on.
Well, good.
Yes.
I was like, oh, that is so cool. Yes. That is so cool. So you're from Hendon, Kentucky.
From Hindman.
Hindman.
Yes,
okay.
Actually. Little bitty town in eastern Kentucky. You know, I grew up in a holler. My mom was a 2nd grade teacher, and my dad was an Army veteran turned coal miner. Grew up in that tiny town. They didn't even have a stoplight until after I went to college. That's how small it was.
And so everything there was about a community and a village. You said it wasn't just your parents that raised you.
Yes, you know, growing up in a really small, tight-knit community is something really special, and it's something to be celebrated here. We have so many rural communities that have a lot of really special people, and Eastern Kentucky, you know, has been hit really hard with the downturn in coal, and so I have been working really hard in the State House and trying to get to Washington now to help our rural communities. I don't want children to feel like they have to leave those towns if they don't want to in order to, you know, go to college, find a way to make a better life. I left there, you know, came to Lexington, and I love it here, but I want every child from no matter what zip code that they're in to be able to build a great and thriving life right where they are if they want to. I want to be sure that, you know, staying in Kentucky after college or after trade school, building a life and believing in our democracy isn't just an act of courage, that it just makes common sense.
What got you into politics?
Well, you know, growing up, I was always fascinated by federal level politics and watched it, but never ever believed that I would be somebody who would step up and put my name on a ballot. And, you know, after President Trump was elected the first time, and we already had Governor Bevin here in Kentucky, and then the GOP took control of the State House for the first time in over 100 years in 2016. And one of the very first week, actually, they repealed prevailing wage, passed right to work, passed charter schools, and cut workers' comp. And so my ears just perked up, because that is, you know, the crux of working Kentuckians and working families, and those attacks couldn't stand. And as I kept watching, I just found myself really angry every day at everything that was happening. I felt like my personal representatives were not representing me, were not making votes that reflected who I am and the values that I was taught and grew up with. And so I was basically just like banging it out on Facebook every day, really mad. And a girlfriend one day was like, hey, you should run for office. And I'm like, are you drunk? And she was like, no, like, I really think a voice like yours is missing in our legislature. And so we decided that if we could make people understand the vast differences between federal level and state level politics, make them understand what was happening, especially during that time when they were really focused on passing charter schools, hurting our public schools, and taking pensions away from teachers, firefighters, police officers, and our public employees. And then if we could make just more people go vote, that would be a win. So really ran not expecting to win, but lo and behold, we did. I flipped that seat by 48 votes, and I became the first Democrat and the first woman to hold that seat.
Here we go.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what other changes do you hope to make?
You know, healthcare Healthcare is something that is very deeply personal to me. I believe that healthcare is a human right and that every single person has the right to have access to quality and affordable health care. As I began serving in the State House, I started on January 8th, and my health insurance didn't kick in until March 8th. So I had a 2-month waiting period. My husband was starting a new job at that exact same time, and the COBRA coverage was just too expensive. We just felt like we couldn't afford it, so we decided to roll the dice and go. We were going about 6 or 7 weeks without health insurance. And during that time, my husband woke up one morning and comes down, and I could hear him kind of laboring for breath. And he lifts up his pajama leg and he goes, "Look, my leg is swollen." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you have a blood clot." And he was like, "Well, I need to take a shower." And I'm like, No. We are going straight to the emergency room. We live 4 minutes from St. Joe East. So we go in, and within about 2 or 3 minutes of being in there, he collapsed. I absolutely thought he died. They worked on him for more than an hour, had asked for permission to put him on a ventilator. He had a massive pulmonary embolism and ended up in ICU for about 3 days, in the hospital for another couple days. And in the blink of an eye, we were tens of thousands of dollars in debt because we didn't have health insurance. And I am so thankful to the healthcare team that was able to save his life. But I want to make change so that no family ever has to go through what we went through. You know, we even got to the parking lot, and he was like, "I think I'm feeling better. Maybe we shouldn't go in."
Trying to avoid what he thought was just going to be a normal emergency room visit. We had no idea, you know, of what was to come, or he definitely didn't have any idea of what was to come. But like, they had even called a pastor in to stand with me because they thought he was going to die. So it's just unconscionable to me that we have families that are having to make hard choices like that. You know, that they don't want to go to the doctor because they're sick, because they can't afford it. We have far too many families right now who are making really hard decisions on, can they pay rent, or can they buy food, or can they buy their medicine? And that is just wrong to me, and I want to make that change. I want every single person to have the health care coverage and the access that they deserve, and we are far from that right now as we see everything is more expensive. We just have 40,000 Kentuckians not take their health insurance through Connect that they had been on because the premiums had gone so high. So we have that many families that are out there that are going to run the risk just like we did. And they're going to have to make a very difficult choice between whether they take care of their personal health or they get a high bill. Yes, and so, you know, those folks, they're going to put off preventative maintenance, you know, through their regular doctor, and the same thing's going to happen. Something catastrophic is going to drive them to the emergency room, and then where will they be? And again, we are the richest nation in the world, and that just should never, ever happen. So many other countries, most other industrialized countries, have some form of nationalized health care, and they spend less per person than our government does, and they have far better health outcomes. So we are doing something terribly wrong here. What do you think about early childhood education? Because I work with the Head Start program. Yes. What's your stance, and what do you think there? Well, education is super important to me. I am a proud product of public schools. My mom, like I said, was my second grade teacher, and so we very much value education in our family. Many of my cousins are also teachers, and so we know that when a kid goes into kindergarten very prepared, that their outcome throughout their educational career is going to be better. You know, early pre-K, early Head Start is so important because it gives those kids the boost that they need, but it also frees up parents to be able to fully participate in our workforce. So I look at that as a win-win. Absolutely. What else are you thinking about? You know, I'm thinking about affordability right now. It's really tough. Everything is more expensive. Affordability is not affordability right now. I mean, right. You're right. It's not. It is unaffordability right now. Everything is more expensive, from housing to hamburgers, and it is just adding on to the fact that our families are struggling. And unfortunately, it's the chaos and the corruption that's happening in Washington, D.C. is causing so much uncertainty
uncertainty for us here at home. Tariffs have hit us so hard here in Central Kentucky, our bourbon industry, our automotive industry, our agriculture industry, and then there's an across-the-board tariff, so everything is more expensive. I just saw a stat that said in 25, I think the average Kentucky family paid about $1,000 extra because of tariffs, and it's expected to be about $1,500 here in 2026 because of tariffs. And tariffs can be a very useful tool in helping to keep jobs and things happening here at home. They can be a useful tool, but the way that they're being deployed right now are not useful for the American people, and it's only causing families to struggle.
Because I know even in our Head Start program, we've seen our food costs for the kids just skyrocket.
Yes.
And so it's very hard for me to think about what's happening to the families that are already low income,
yes,
having to pay those high prices in the grocery store.
And then next year when the extra SNAP cuts hit, it's going to be even worse. We're already hearing from so many of our food banks that they are just overrun with need, and that is only going to increase. The Medicaid cuts that are coming and the SNAP cuts, they were intentionally made to be after the election this year, after the midterms, and so we are going to be in a world of hurt. Kentucky is the state also that's going to be hurt the most by the Medicaid cuts. We have 35 hospitals that are on the chopping block that know that the large majority of their money comes through Medicaid, and they're having to make some really hard decisions. We've already seen 2 birthing centers close down. The hospital in Flemingsburg has cut everything except their emergency room. So rural communities are going to lose access, and that's just the hospitals. That's not talking about the clinics or the nursing homes that rely on so much Medicaid money as well. So we have families that are already struggling, and things are only going to get worse if we don't turn things around.
And it feels to me, and I could be wrong, and I'd like to hear your perspective on it, but it seems like it's an attack on the working man.
It absolutely is. We have billionaires and millionaires that seem to be running everything. They clearly have bought and paid for our Congress. They are controlling monopolies within the healthcare industry, within our media, and we are quickly watching our middle class disappear. And I think one thing that we definitely need to do is we've got to turn that around, because we know when we have a strong middle class, our economy is strong. So we have to be sure that we are lifting up all families, and working families are taking the brunt of what's happening. They're taking the brunt of the tax code as well right now. And so really, I talk about the coming election a lot by saying, we're far past red versus blue. We are now living in a time that it's billionaires versus you.
Wow.
I mean,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I could sit here another couple of hours with you, but I'm going to give you the last word to young girls or young women that may be looking to you. What kind of advice would you give them?
Oh my gosh, just, I would tell them to follow their dreams and to follow their heart and to trust their gut, because our guts are hardly ever wrong. And, we are here celebrating being unapologetically woman, and it is a time that we need young girls to step up. When we look at our government, when we look at our state government, and when we look at our federal government, there are far fewer women serving than men. And so I would tell those young girls, hey, we're looking at you. We want you to grow up and get into public service, because that's what it is. And I kind of bristle when somebody calls me a politician, because it has such a negative connotation. I believe that I'm a public servant, and I want to, serve the great people of Kentucky, because I want every single person and family to have what they need, not just to survive, but to thrive. So girls, keep at it, keep your head down, do the hard work. You can do anything that you set your mind to, and don't listen to the naysayers. There's a lot of stuff out there that I'm hearing right now from folks on the right and the left that a woman can't win the race that I'm in right now. And I say, when you hear that sexist and misogynist attitude, just let that go harder. Let that fuel your fire to prove those people wrong, because we are women, hear us roar.
Dang, girl, yes. Look, you guys have heard everything that Cherlynn has had to say. Young girls and young women, keep your head down, avoid the naysayers, and just do whatever it is that you want to do and trust your gut. Continue to watch us and other women on Unapologetically Woman, and we'll see you soon.